not doing anything and go out not doing anything. So
No.
We gotta
What's that?
get a new updated agenda.
I was waiting on that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll see in a minute.
It was all Friday. Hey, how are you, sir? What do you mean? Oh, I'm the deputy chief. Yeah.
It's the substitute today.
Yeah, it's the substitute. Who authorized the day off again? Is that strategic that a lot of his days off come on Mondays?
Generally tries to do the end of the month, but him and Matt and Todd were all the same. You know, they get so busy there, get to a point where they start to
Lose track of
time.
time.
Yeah, or they start to lose time. Because they're
Oh, okay.
relaxed, so
You know me, I'm full of. In fact, I'm having breakfast with Kevin tomorrow morning.
I've actually monopolized the past few Fridays, so I was like, we can go ahead.
We did have somebody sign up, but he really meant to be on the regular meeting, so
Okay.
there are none.
Do you have your handy dandy little
Where's
sheet
Chris tonight?
that you normally,
Oh, I haven't.
Hopefully relaxing.
I'm running late.
Keeping home.
Not at a ball game or something for his kids?
No, I think they just took some time off.
Oh, that's good. He needs
I think
it.
he's to the point where he's probably about ready to lose time, maxed out.
Yeah.
sure he's watching
Have a regular meeting tonight.
Yeah,
Don't
but
let,
he does.
don't let him kid you. You knew it was going to be.
We gonna be on TV tonight?
Yeah, Kurt said that there was something coming past.
would you sign that? I'll pass it this way.
Sure.
So we will be on TV.
Yeah, but it was always on YouTube.
Good evening. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk.
The one who's not ready yet?
Oh,
Okay.
Oh, I'll find that later. Sorry.
you're fine.
At 5:02, Mayor Miller.
Here.
Alderpersons Clem,
Here.
Monroe,
Here.
Simmons,
Here.
Parker,
Here.
Stacy is absent, Shadle,
Here.
Sanders,
Here.
and Sellers is absent.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Now for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Alderman Shadle.
See that on there?
I pledge allegiance to
Thank you, sir. Do we have a motion for, on item number 4, for approval of the agenda?
So move.
Second.
Alderman Clem made the first motion, seconded by Alderman Shadle. All of those in, or do we need?
Voice is fine. I'm counting.
All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5, approval of the minutes from October 16th, 2023, Finance Committee of the Whole meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very much. Alderman Shadle and Alderman Clem. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6 is public comments, limited to agenda items. There are none. So we'll move to item number 7. Review, discuss supplemental appropriation ordinance presented by Director Richter.
Thank you. I'll hit the lights. Yeah, thank you.
Lights.
Thank you. At the end of each fiscal year, the city council amends the appropriation ordinance to take into account additional revenue or expenses, or less revenue and expenses. And I have outlined kind of a lengthy memo detailing some of the changes that are requested. So up on the screen is the budget comparison, and just very quickly, the columns that we're looking at, or if you have it printed out for you, or if it's on the screen, the columns that we're looking at are kind of in the middle. Let me just start on the left quick. So these are actual activity from 2021 is the first column. Actual activity, actual numbers for 2022. Those are complete final numbers for those 2 years. So the next column is 2023. Those are year to date. So that's about, mid-November. Those are, that includes up through mid-November. And then the next column, it says parent budget 2023. So this is our actual 2023 budget that's in play right now. And then the next column to that, where it says comparison budget, it says 2023 reappropriation is what that is. I'm afraid a lot of my narratives or account titles get cut off. I'm a little too lengthy. So that's what that means. Those are the proposed new numbers for reappropriation of the 2023 budget, the budget that we're in right now this year. The next column then will show you the difference of the adjustment that is requested and the percentage of the budget. So this is the document that I'm just going to kind of highlight. I'll try not to be too wordy, as like I said, my memo's pretty wordy.
Yes, sir.
But yes.
Director Richter, could you do me a favor and just explain to everybody a little bit more what the appropriation is and how it works? I know you kind of briefly hit on it there, but explain so the people actually know and how this is the important document that shifts things around, if you would.
Sure. So the budget is really one of the building blocks that goes into the appropriation. This is the actual line by line minute detail that goes into the appropriation that needs to be set before the end of a year of the prior year. We do go back and look at different items that happened throughout the year. We didn't know as much was going to happen with, I'll pick a big project, maybe the viaduct or Hancock Avenue. So we need to go back and rebudget some of these things. The department heads, I might get too lengthy, but the department heads are allowed to work within their budgets. So if a department head has maybe, my department, for example, has a budget of $100,000, maybe my travel budget went over by 500, but my office supplies is under 500. So I'm in what I was budgeted. So you'll see some of that in here. You'll see, a negative 100 and a positive 100 in some areas, just because we're taking care of things. I could have went down every line item and made some minute change, but I don't believe that's necessary. That's too much. We're trying to hit the major items that change during the year. I don't know if that kind of answered some of your questions, or?
It does, and I would also highly compliment you on the memo that you did. I started out to look at the appropriation budget, and I said, oh, now I remember all this, and started going through this, and then then I see this memo and start reading this memo, and I mean, it's a really, really fantastic job. Thank you. I mean, it takes a lot of guesswork out and a lot of questions out, so I really appreciate it.
It is, every line item is reviewed. Again, it's almost like doing another budget. So we just got done reviewing the 2024 budget. Now we go back and we look at 2023 and we kind of go, is there some tweaks that we need to do to line things up a little better?
Alderperson Sellers.
Just wanted to know with that comment, why are we at, last year we were less than what we are this year? Why did you raise the amount?
Of the overall budget, you mean? Because if you look at revenues, we are going to come in, the things, and I'm just talking general fund, is that what you're asking? So if you, actually, the very first items that I was going to talk about right there are sales tax, home rule sales tax, I'm talking income tax and replacement tax. And right there off the bat, we're going to be bringing in 7, 8, 9, a million more than what we anticipated. Sales tax, I can point to, well, the inflation over the beginning of the year. If you're paying more for a television than you were 6 months ago, I'm afraid you're going to be paying more in sales tax than you would have if you bought it when it was, back when prices were at the beginning of the year. And you also, the 2023 budget, you have to think also that it was done and completed in November of 2022. So, we've had quite a year as far as increasing prices. So, that's where some of these dollars are increasing. So that's why the overall budget increased, is there's more revenue coming in. Now, what you do with that revenue is up to you, and I will touch on that here at the end of the general fund, if we want to look at that item. Does that help at all?
Yes.
Okay. Should I just go down the list a little?
Go ahead.
So, like I said, income tax, replacement tax, sales tax are up. And so, we've increased those line items. Telephone utility tax and cable television taxes. So those are two separate taxes identified here on the spreadsheet. Let me see. So both of those are negatives, and you can't really see it very well on the screen, but it's a negative 50,000 and a negative 18,000, which means we're not going to bring in as much revenue as we anticipated there. And the reason on that is technology. I don't know about if you're dropping your cable service to go with internet only, but I think a lot of people are doing that. That's where our tax comes from. Also with telephone, a lot of people have dropped their landlines, and that's where the tax comes from on that. I believe I'm correct in saying that telephone tax does not apply to data plans. So a lot of people have data plans now instead of landlines. The whole technology has changed. So both the cable television and the telephone tax have been on a downward trend for many years as technology has changed. Also, we've made a small change to miscellaneous small grants. We don't usually budget anything there because, we don't know what we're going to get. This isn't something where we apply for. These are small ones, like this was from Stevenson County Crime Stop for the fire department. So we put that in since we were doing a rebudget. We added that revenue in. And then liquor licenses, we increased that as well. That's up quite a bit. Liquor license is pretty volatile as far as if you get new liquor licenses, since they are $10,000 a piece. So if you get a few of those, that increases your revenue quite a bit in the years. And those you don't know if they're going to come around, if a change in ownership or how that happens. But I think we had 4 this year, maybe. 4. So that's where that comes from. And let's see if I can, now it won't work. Push it down. Oh, it worked before. Okay.
There you go.
Did it change, or maybe Kurt did it for me?
It went to
Okay, Kurt, help me. So the next line item you see there is airport grant. Those are funds that we received from IDOT that we had not budgeted for. Next item there is spiller fee. We don't generally budget for the spiller fee. That has to do with the fire department and hazmat situations, so you don't know when those are going to happen. So we are budgeting, putting that in there, increasing in that line item. Also with insurance proceeds And one of the lines, I'm afraid, it says insurance proceeds twice. One is regular insurance proceeds, like a vehicle accident, some payment that was due to us, someone took out a hydrant or something like that. But the other one is insurance proceeds work comp. So our reimbursements for work comp there were up significantly this year, so we increased the revenue line on that. The vehicle, is it vehicle impound fee, I believe, one moment. Insurance fees, and.
Went down 13,000.
Yeah, that one's really not, you know, it happened to be that way this year. I don't really have an explanation. Less vehicles impounded this year. We did also have some sale of surplus property. We do that generally a couple times a year. You never know, what things will be up for sale every year. But another large one, you were asking alderperson Sellers why it increased, is interest income. This year has seen a significant, dramatic increase in the amount of interest we have been earning on our accounts. And as you can see, I changed that to $1 million. We increased that line item another $1 million. So there's $2 million right there. So now we're just going to look at the individual general fund departments. I'll try and speed it up here. Education and training expense was increased for the Robert's Rules of Order class or training that was held. Okay, Kurt? The legal advertising and commissions, that one was, I think, one back, but it was the amount of advertising for police and fire commissions for hiring purposes. The next one would be the clerk, and I think the clerk was just a wash within the department. We can go to the next one. That is a wash, 500 increase, 500 decrease. And the next one would be the city manager mayor department. Several adjustments were needed due to the retirement of the prior city manager. So when he retired, his vacation was paid out, and that's why you see an increase there. And the associated fringe benefits with that. There was a decrease in the amount of books, periodicals, and membership, just probably, the former city manager had other different memberships and things like that. And then an increase in education and training, travel. The next budget would be communications department, and that one is a wash as well. This one was offsetting expenses, a decrease in education and training and travel, and a decrease there and an increase in printing costs to cover the monthly city newsletter. The only, I believe the only expense line item in there is the newsletter, and it could also have a little bit of the new logo stuff that was implemented earlier this spring. The next one's finance department. And I had a couple adjustments here. The biggest one being a note finding from the auditors last year. It really wasn't a finding, it was just a kind of a heads up. This year, when they do the audit for 2023, is a new audit requirement to track all of the subscription-based software arrangements. So we purchased a software to take care of that. It also is taking care of some of our lease activity as well. The next one would be Public Works. This is a very small budget. It really is just the Public Works Director and the activities of the Public Works Director. So you see several negatives here as this position has been open since the new city manager was appointed. The next, I believe those are all negatives. The airport would be next for any type of changes. We had a change, offsetting adjustments to contracted building repair and contracted equipment repair. We needed money to fix the broken runway lights, which was a very high priority item that needed to be taken care of. Increase to the insurance expense line item. As I believe last year, it was just missed in error. We've always had insurance at the airport. I think that was human error last year. And then an increase to the taxi rehab line and a decrease to fencing and security. Those are both grant projects out at the library, or out at the airport, sorry. Moving to the street department. The street department has several changes here. Various adjustments to the wage and overtime items in the street department due to staffing changes and open positions. So if we had open positions in the street department, we probably had overtime for someone to cover because we didn't have a full staff at some points. But some are general overtime, because we do expect to have some overtime, specifically in the winter season with snow plowing. Engineering has been increased due to the additional expenses for the Hancock Bridge and viaduct issues, the countryside recreation path relocation, and the Public Works Service contract with Fairgram to cover the position of the Public Works Director. Gasoline expenses also were increasing. Printing expense has been increased due to, business cards, new logo. Rock and road materials has increased. And for the ice melt, we anticipate needing one more delivery of ice melt prior to the end of 2023, as our sheds are not full. And then we have machinery and equipment, repairs necessary for the V-boxes and 2 dump body repairs. And that kind of sums up the street department. Moving on to cemetery, reduction of the temporary mower wages, as those were all charged to the street department. So we usually have one mower in the cemetery, but this year we just charged everybody a street department. They're all kind of, it's all within the general fund, and they all kind of move around, the workers themselves. Forestry, wage and health insurance decreases due to open positions in the year. So that was a significant decrease in the forestry area, and also the health insurance associated with those open positions. That and the tree assistance, we have increased because of, we do a dangerous tree removal where we have them do a large amount of trees, but we also have had intermittent dangerous trees that were not part of the big bid process. So that's increased that line item. Community development, we're seeing just offsetting expenses for health insurance and consulting services. And also under health insurance, it's a large swing if somebody goes from single coverage to maybe single +1 or family for the expense to the city. So that's what I believe probably happened in health insurance, is just that, someone probably added family or spouse or something. Moving on to the police department. We have a reduction in wage and fringe due to their open positions, which is a significant dollar amount. We also had to increase the required pension contribution for 2023. When we do the budget for 2023, we don't know that exact number. Once the actuary is done in the springtime of 2023 is when we know what the real number is there. So we did have to increase that. You will see that also in the fire department. Let's see. We've also have a couple smaller items, contracted vehicle repair, that's just vehicle maintenance. And then some consulting services, which I believe that was someone to help with doing the OVW grant, to help write the grant and stuff. And we've had that grant for several years, and we've always had someone help us with that. Moving on to fire department. We do have an increase in overtime fire of $179,000. And also an increase, this is their increase in the fire pension contribution that the actuaries tell us. So it is also part of our pension obligation bond to require that we make the full annual payment every year. So we can't just pay part of what the actuary says. We pay what the full amount that they tell us every year is due. There's also been an increase in contracted vehicle repair and maintenance, and education and training for new staff and new firefighters. And increase in medical services due to the cost of a significant required testing that was during the year. Office supplies and some additional vehicle supplies were needed. They're doing some of their own repairs in the fire department, and those are the supplies to fix those vehicles. And moving on to the next department, I believe is animal control. Or we have building. It must have been animal control. I believe they needed a new heater in the kennels. So we do have a decrease in their overtime expense and offsetting for that heater under that contracted equipment repair line item. Hearing administration, we increased that as we are conducting more hearings, more administrative hearings for ordinance violations. This is the cost of the the person who oversees all of the administrative hearings. So we have increased that line item by $12,000. And the next line item is department's human resources. There have been more medical services. She does that for background checks, pre-employment background checks. We've also seen increased cost in getting background checks back because people charge to verify, are starting to charge for verifying employment. It's surprising how much, $40 or $50 to verify someone has worked there. Let's see, I think those were her big ones. Decreases in recruitment, advertising, and staff training. MIS, or information technology. We have several line items that have been decreased in the MIS budget. We had decreased utilization of the consultant and fewer software hardware purchases this year. And then the last department under the general fund is interdepartmental. Interdepartmental is, you could say, somewhat of a catch-all, but this is our bank fees, our retiree insurance, things that don't fall into one of the other listed departments. These are more general, where they affect like all the departments. There were increases in the bank fee expense, increased in the liability insurance expense. Unfortunately, our insurance numbers for liability and work comp, they don't come in until late in December, so usually it's past the time when the budget is created, when we get real numbers of what our insurance is going to be. Increase in property tax expense. The city only pays property taxes on those properties that we recently acquired within the last year. Once they're acquired, we ask for an exemption, but we have to pay that first year. It has to be paid, but then we can get the exemption for any years that follow. I have added the transfer to general fund reserve of $250,000. That is required per ordinance that we save $250,000. That's to build up a reserve. The various grants, I believe that's what's cut off. Transfer to various, it says, that's transfer to various grants. So grant match, bulletproof vest grant, that type of thing. And then the transfer out to either the street fund or the landfill fund. If you remember it's been a while since the auditors did their presentation. Our landfill fund has a negative fund balance of $5 million. And this happens because the liability to close the landfill is so high. And the auditors write it up as a finding because we don't have enough cash in that fund to cover that bill, cover $5 million. And so what the plan, or what we've thought to do, is to transfer a little money there, and maybe by 5 years, if we transfer $500,000 a year, $500,000 a year, we would eventually get that finding off of our audit. So as I said, right now it's a negative $5 million. We don't have the cash in the fund. And so either we move it to landfill fund and we still keep the finding on the books, or the auditors will keep the finding on the books until it is gone. But we also have an area there that we can say, hey, we are attempting to correct this problem each year. So we have an area in our audit to explain what's going on our side. So the auditors have what they say, and then we can also make a comment in our audit, hey, we're trying to take care of this. It might take us a couple years, but we're working on it. So also, there's that. So in order to balance the budget here, as you see, there's, like Alderman Sellers pointed out, it's higher than it was when we went into it. You could take that money and put it to streets. You could leave it in the general fund. You could put it in the landfill. Those were my suggestions. I think what I did is I put 50-50 in this budget, part to the landfill, part to streets, of any overage in the fund. I guess I would just like to ask if that is something we would like.
Alderman Sellers.
I would just like to ask, what is, how much is in the landfill cash, or account right now?
So the, sorry, let me close this. The landfill right now has $1 million in cash, $1.2 million in cash in there right now, and that's because it was purchased on a 50-year lease. So we won't get any more cash other than that in the landfill. And every year the landfill has expenses of just monitoring. So we're required by the EPA to do testing all the time to take care of that. I know enough to be dangerous on that subject, but we do pay for monitoring every year, and that $1 million is going to be gone in 3 to 4 years. But even with that $1 million in there, that's where the liability to close those landfills is much higher than that. The landfill closure liability right now is $5 million. And so, like I said, we don't have the cash in there to cover it.
And so Darren, would he know how much we have to pay for that then? For the inspections or all the different things
Well-
she said, or is it,
City manager?
I'm sorry.
oh, okay. How much?
Darren could definitely give us a little statement on what it costs currently and what we expect it'll cost in the future.
Yeah, I think the landfill maintenance contract, we call it, the annual maintenance contract is around $225,000 to $250,000 a year. About 50–60% of that cost is annually encrypted into the lab fees, so they're passed through costs of the contract. And we're working on, it's an annual contract. The leachate systems from 2 and 3, those are the most expensive part of the landfill. They have to be tested along with the monitoring wells tested annually, and those results put back. But I believe we do quarterly testing on all the leachate systems. And then there's also maintenance cost to the landfills and inspections that are required annually, along with EPA visits. So there's this question that comes up annually every year about when is the landfill closure going to happen. And the reality is 2 and 3 were unregulated landfills, so they would likely never close, even though there was a date set many years ago that they would close, since they don't have a poly liner in the bottom of them. And they were unregulated, which means that those 2 landfills could take anything that the city put in them at the time. Those items will likely not close based on the leachate constituents that we get out of them regularly to the treatment plant. Landfill 4 has the best options of closure, and that's still, if I'm not mistaken, in the better part of almost 20 years yet to close.
Alderman Sellers? Or Sanders, I mean. I mean,
One more comment, Jay.
yeah, go ahead.
That's why your auditors are working with Michelle and giving you an audit ding for not having the fees or monies on hand that they think it will take to get it out to the closure neck of the woods. Because honestly, in what we do every day in the city of Freeport, the landfill is a large liability to the city with groundwater issues.
Right.
Thank you.
City manager, you want to?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just point out we have a little more than half left to go, so I'd like to, if we could, save any more landfill questions toward the end, or maybe at the end of the council meeting.
Okay. Do you mind waiting? Is that?
At the end of the council meeting?
Let's take Alderman Sanders, since he already had his hand up, and go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, my concern is the cost and breakdown details of what is bringing that quarterly cost each quarter of the year, and how is it broken down?
We break it down, and you'll see our annual contracts due here at the end of the year out by landfill 2, landfill 3, and landfill 4. So it's all broke out. We call it an a la carte. So the way we've developed it is whatever services we perform, that's what you pay for. And we give a detailed listing in the invoicing about what's done and what's not done. If we don't have to do the service, then we don't have to do it. For instance, this year we had to, there's extra requirements behind the leachate system that weren't in prior years. And the year before that, it was the bypass. So that it's an ever-changing idea of things that are kind of a la carte to the system, to the city to perform.
Do we have analytical reports of the situation and progress or lack of progress out at the landfill?
Yeah, the city gets copied on all the landfill sampling results every time they go to your chief lab consultant, which is Matt Graves now.
Who?
Matt Graves, he's the lab sampling.
Over at the waste treatment plant?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When has the last time that you might know of, since we don't have the information before us, who is actually doing this inspection, testing soil and things of this nature out at the landfill?
We do for the city.
Yeah.
Fair and Graham does?
Yes, sir. We're
And
the
the-
landfill engineer for the city of Freeport.
Okay. And what else, when it comes to the overall view, what I meant to say was the overall analysis of everything, budgeting, the conditions and things like that, because this is waste hazards.
Yeah.
And we need to see these kind of things on a quarterly basis as well. Yeah.
Those are all developed on an annual basis, Larry.
Are they
That's-
on
that's
an
the way
annual
the
basis?
EPA wants it.
Okay.
We do regulation testing quarterly, and then there's an annual report developed. And then Michelle has an annual fiscal responsibility that we have to update for the city in a final report on what the liability and the years extended or out. That's how they come up with the closure amount.
I think that
Yeah,
this discussion's probably better for when we review it
wanna
later
do it
this
that
year.
way.
Okay,
I
awesome.
prefer it that way.
Director Richter, would you like to continue, please? Thank you, ma'am.
Kurt, could I get the next one? Thank you. The next is the projects fund. So this is where we do our sidewalk project and our the Jane Addams Trail membership fees and the Peck Path membership fees. So you'll see we were previously saving for a trail project last year, but we found out that we were not awarded this grant, so that's the negative 66,000 you see there. I removed that revenue. The next slide will be the sidewalk program. This is for residents in town, and also we're looking at doing some more work with the company that we did before that did work downtown. So we've increased that from, oh, I'm sorry. This is to cover the work that was done downtown for this year. I'm getting my years mixed up. This is increase of 10,000 to cover that work. And a transfer in from corporate to cover it, and then increase to the expense. And the next one will be the trail projects, which is Jane Addams Trail and Peck Path. We are members of those groups, and they have annual fees. This year, the billing for the Jane Addams Trail was adjusted, and we had 2 billings happen in 1 year. I think it's Jane Addams Trail is $16,500 a year, and so we had 2 come in 1 year, so that's why you'll see the increase. Neighborhood housing is the next one. This is the property transfer tax that we receive when someone sells a home. That's where the revenue comes from for this fund, and we use this majorly for demolitions. You'll see a slight increase in transfer tax based on current activity. Funds were received from a grant that were recorded as miscellaneous local sources, so you'll see another increase of $20,900 there. We did have significant demolitions completed this year, and need to increase the expense line item. We'll also be using reserves of this fund, and I also made a note in my memo that the reserves in this fund are $650,000. So there are plenty of reserves to be used in 2023 for these demolitions. Moving on to the next one, which would be you'll see there are no changes here, healthcare fund, and we're moving into the grants that we receive. No change to this one, and then it'll cycle through these. That means PCT is Pretzel City Transit, Pretzel City Area Transit. No changes in this one. This actually we've changed out of this accounting. These account codes, no changes here. And the next one that should change is FEMA Fire Assistance. This one. I've increased this one 6,000. These are the ambulance that will be coming in this year. We received a grant to pay for 1 ambulance, and we bought 1 ambulance and paid for it ourselves. This is the grant for that. We just need to increase that a hair. on both sides, revenue and expense, no expense to the city here. The next one will be, it'll cycle through K-9 grant, no changes, sex offender at the police department, IDNR round 2, these are demolition type grants, no changes. Explorer Club, no change, that's police department. This is the downtown accessibility. There's a few changes here. Increase in, actually, this one we had to add all line items because we thought this one would be done last year in December. It wasn't finally closed out until this year. So when we came in to do the 2023 budget, we had no budget for, this was the ramps for downtown. We had no budget this year, but we had the grant and the funding. We just needed to transfer it over and get it in our budget for 2023. That happens frequently with the grants. Sometimes you think you'll be closed out by the end of the year, you're down to the end of your budget, but then it doesn't get closed. Something is hung up on that and stalls it at the last minute. Strong communities, we just had an increase in the amount of the grant. So we thought it was going to be a $50,000 grant, but it's a $300,000 grant. And this is demolitions, right? Yes. So that's a good thing. The increase in revenue, increase grant. Shop with a Cop, that was just actually a transfer of an account. The police department runs that. Shop with a Cop, so is the adding of a budget line item, revenue and expense, no expense to the city as a whole. The next one should be this one. This is a police department recruitment and retention grant that we received mid-year. So we did not know we were getting this. Revenue and expense of $52,000. Even no expense to the city outside of no match. And the next one that should come up, I believe, is Pretzel City Transit. The ones before had no grant. We don't use those account numbers anymore. Pretzel City should be coming up with a slight change. There we go. Our grant award for the federal portion of Pretzel City Transit was increased, so we increased a corresponding expense for Pretzel City Transit. The next one is Pretzel City Transit encompasses 3 different grants. It all works together to provide the buses around town. So you'll also see a state component and another federal component of that, and we've made a couple of little adjustments there. The next budget that we'll get to would be the library. And this is the library. There's only a few changes to library budget. Ashley handled these herself. She also went over them with her board at their last meeting, and it was approved by their board. So I don't really touch Ashley's stuff. The next one will be motor fuel. So we do have a few changes here with motor fuel. The transportation renewal funds and the motor fuel tax allotment revenue, those 2 line items have been adjusted to actual. So it's just kind of a little flip-flop in revenue there. I don't know if when we did it last year, to me it seems like we put the wrong revenue number. They're off by such a close number. But we have that fixed and ready to go. Also, you'll see this a lot, increase in interest income, just because of increased interest rates. The motor fuel fund right now has $4 million in it. And we're planning to use all that money over the next, finishing up this year, we're using part of it, and next year, then we'll be depleting all of that, as I look at Darren in the back. So here you'll see use of fund balance and corresponding expenses to use that fund balance. So we have projects that are wrapping up this year to use motor fuel money on. There's only certain projects that qualifies for, and that's all coordinated with Fairgram and IDOT. So that's what those expenses, those changes in motor fuel are for. And those projects have been discussed with council previously. North Greenfield is the one that comes to mind. I know there's others. Then we're going to roll into the TIFs. So the first one will be downtown TIF. Or actually, there's no change in downtown TIF. The only one that has changes is Meadows. So the rest of them are all kept the same. Meadows TIF, you'll see a large change in property taxes on that line item. During FY 2023, the city's been working with a developer and Stevenson County to obtain the correct tax increment on a TIF property. As a result, a significant amount of back dollars were received from the county on this TIF. We are still in the process of verifying the exact amount. As you can see, the taxes generated from this TIF have been increased with the corresponding increase in expenses. So I'm still working with the county because I think they paid us too much, is what I think is happening here. And I hope to have that resolved before the end of the year. And so you're seeing the tax disbursement of about the same amount because we pay back the county a certain proportion of the TIF revenue every year. And if that is truly an overpayment, that's where you'll see it go back. So this was just, and we were able to get it all settled with the developer. This is the developer that did over by Starbucks and that, Joanne Fabrics, back when that went in. That's why those adjustments are there. Next would be tourism fund. So we have a few to go through. We do see a little bit of an increase in hotel motel tax coming in, and we needed to increase the another line item in the tourism fund. So we are seeing a good thing there, you know, more interest coming in and more hotel motel tax coming in than anticipated. The next would be street improvement. So interest income has been increased. The amount of prior fund balance that existed on 10/31/22 has been adjusted slightly to actual. So we had predicted last year of using fund balance. So I'm just bringing that down to what actually was there as of December 31st. A transfer from the general fund Greenfield and Sullivan, that was also discussed. A contracted infrastructure has been decreased and recategorized as capital outlay. That's just the way I have to do it accounting-wise because it's a significant investment, and so I need to depreciate some of that. And so capital outlay tells me I depreciate. And then engineering expense and rock and road expense has been added to accurately define these expenses. We didn't have engineering in there before. So we want to get those items in there so you, as engineering, you know at the top of mind what exactly it is. It was under contracted infrastructure previously. We broke it out into a new line item. Moving on to capital equipment fund. Earlier this year, it was decided to purchase an asphalt recycler and roller instead of a 10-yard truck. Funds have been moved between the vehicles and the equipment line item for this reason. So, and here, this one's just interest income. Here's where you see what I just said. We just moved one from vehicles to machinery because we had in there to buy a truck, but instead of doing that, we bought the recycler and the roller. So we've moved those around. And we did have to increase the lease principal and lease interest. I think that was a miscalculation on finance's part. Last year, we have a few items that go through there, like our vehicles we lease from Enterprise and a couple other equipment type items. The next fund would be fire improvement. Fire improvement is where all of our ambulance revenue comes in and also where a lot of their capital expenses flow through. So you see we have increased GEMT revenue, which stands for Ground Emergency Medical Transport, by $50,000. Miscellaneous local sources has been increased due to a reimbursement we received to replace fire gear. And then interest income has been increased as well. The fund balance reserve transfer has been increased due to the timing of the receipt of the fire department's aerial truck. So this is one of those items, like I said before, we thought we were gonna get it back in December. We didn't get it until the spring. So that was all taken care of in last year's budget, but then we didn't get it. And so here we have the bond money sitting in that account. It was paid. Here we just need to cover the expense. So we had this budgeted and funds procured last year in the bond. However, the truck just wasn't received until 2023. Contracted vehicle repair has been increased because of a significant one significant item, a repair to engine number 1. Contractual billing has been increased to cover the expense of our Medicare audit that was conducted this year. We had to hire outside support. This was a really lengthy process, and massive reports and calculations were required to report to Medicare. As part of the GEMT money that we receive in revenue, we have to give half of that back to the state of Illinois. So because I increased GEMT, ground emergency transport, on the top by $50,000, I have to increase the expense by half of that and give it back to the state. That's just the rules of the program. Before that, under vehicle expense in fire improvement, this is the purchase of the aerial. This is where we need to cover that purchase. And quickly, I can do the fire and police pensions. Fire and police pensions are what we call fiduciary funds. The city does not control those funds. They're controlled by the Board of Fire and their individual boards. So this rebudget that you see here was seen by the Police Pension Fund Board and was approved by them. So, and it's the same for the next slide, which would be the Fire Pension Board. They have seen the rebudget, and last year we were very hesitant to record any gains. I think everybody remembers last year. So we were very hesitant to say that we were going to make money last year because we were very worried. And so we're adjusting that now and recording that we're making money in those pension funds. Do you want me to continue?
Should we continue, or do we want to recess until after city council? How much longer do you have?
I can talk fast. I got a page and a half.
Okay.
I'll talk fast.
Let's get it out of the way. Yeah, let's finish it.
Landfill closure, you'll see increase in interest and depreciation expense on the landfill. The next one would be Health and Environment Fund. This would be our garbage or trash the money that's collected for those services and the expense when we pay out for that. So you've seen we've taken in a little bit more than what we anticipated on other charges for services. That actually was money that was due to us a couple years ago, and we were able to get that from the haulers this year. So that was that increase for 34,000, and then you'll see a slight increase in the fees from the haulers. Moving on to the water fund. We have an increase to the grant revenue, which would have been for lead service lines replacements. The next one is the IEPA loan proceeds and capital outlay. So you'll see a corresponding revenue and expense. Both are decreased as these funds are recorded into a loan liability code. So in the beginning of the grant season, we put these out there to tell you as a council, hey, we're going to get, $7.8 million in loan proceeds to pay for these big projects that we're going to do. But when we get these big projects coming through, we capitalize them as assets. So at this point, we're going to take those out of the budget because they're going to hit the balance sheet and not going to be hitting the income statement. Interest income is, of course, rising, so we increase that. Overtime on the expense side was increased due to open positions. So we had a few open positions in the water sewer area, so we had to incur overtime by those employees that we did have to cover those tasks. So you'll see an increase there. Other post-employment benefits. It was a new expense in FY 2022, and it will continue into 2023. This is really an expense that the auditors look for. And so we need to record the expense, record a budget line item for it. Consulting services was increased due to emergency water main repair on Hancock, Route 75 water main, and the Public Works Service contract with Fairgram. So that contract that we do have with Fairgram, because we don't have a current Public Works director, is split between the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund, because he does work in all of those. So you'll see that comment here. Various supplies have been increased up to actual levels. And a transfer out, there was a transfer out in here for, I believe, $250,000. I think it's on the next screen for the Chicago project. That was done we were able to do that in the previous year, so I'm taking that out of this budget. Moving on to the sewer fund. We spent the last of our federal ARPA dollars at the very beginning of 2023. So I've increased the revenue line here to show those dollars. Residential and commercial service for sewer has increased. This is just based on, the CPI increase. We do that every year in May. So you'll see a little bump in just the regular revenue that comes in for sewer. Capital improvement, that was increased earlier this year for the construction of the wastewater treatment plant. So that capital improvement line item has been increased. Pre-treatment fines, we've seen a significant reduction in this line item. So we issue fines to those businesses that don't comply with pre-treatment, and that has gone down this year, which is really good news. So we're not having to take care of that. It's good news it's being treated before it hits our system. IEPA loan proceeds and capital outlay, similar to above. They're both decreased as these projects are going to be recorded to an asset and capitalized. The consulting services also were increased due to the Public Works Service contract, and also other consulting services, which would include engineering of unanticipated sewer line consulting. So when I'm thinking of Center. Center Street, that we didn't realize, we didn't know we'd have to do that, and so we needed some consulting on that. And the last one, storm sewer. Interest has increased, and then we also anticipate needing other post-employment benefits increased as well. And that, like I said, that usually happens at audit time when we get our reports back from our actuaries, where we have to record an expense for after people retire for like their medical insurance. That's what that stems from.
Thank you very much, Director Richter. Any questions, comments? Alderperson Sellers.
Yes, I just had a couple. I can't really put my glasses back on here. You know what? I know it's getting late, so I can ask these questions private, you know, just me and you.
Okay.
Or whatever, because it is getting late.
Okay. Manager Boyer, do you have a comment? Okay, I guess we're good. We will move on to item 9, which is public comments, agenda or non-agenda items, limited to 3 minutes per person. Are there any?
The light's coming on.
Do we know?
Motion to adjourn.
I guess that brings us to item number 10, adjournment. And do I have a motion?
Wait,
So move.
First and a second, that'd be Parker and Clem. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.